Oh, hi there. You're listening and or watching Podcast is Broken. One of us has COVID. Can you
Hi,
guess which
it's
one?
one of us.
One of these things is not like the other.
Is it safe for us to take our masks off now?
Are we good?
I think we're far enough apart. I'm in Liverpool,
you-
so that's pretty
I
far.
don't know.
isn't
I've
it?
heard about computer viruses and I haven't done much reading, so you tell me.
All right, take a
Maybe
while.
you could back
So
away
safe.
from your microphone and not breathe.
Yeah, if you wouldn't
into it.
mind.
That'd be great.
That'd be good.
Oh no!
That's enough. That's enough of that. Welcome.
It's
You're
a
listening to
lawsuit
Podcast
waiting
is
to
Broken. Exactly. Podcast is Broken, where we try to make Canadian news fun, or possibly even the funnest, if they'll let us get away with it. My name is Brittlestar.
My name is Steve Boots.
My name is Lisa.
But not really, obviously. I
Not
that
really,
seems
no.
pretty. It seems
Yeah,
pretty.
Lisa
fair.
is a fictional construct.
It is
Exactly. So yeah, as
People wish.
mentioned, I'm in Liverpool, England currently, and I've just returned from something called Wetherspoons. And if I sound a little lubricated, that's probably why. They have the cheapest pints in town. So
I think we have to have a shot
Wetherspoons is
after
like a chain, isn't it?
it is a chain. It's a massive chain.
Oh.
Here's what's fascinating about Wetherspoons, and I think that the owner of Wetherspoons is maybe not someone we three would choose as a friend. However, I do think that it's amazing that they choose old heritage buildings that are being leased out or like rented out, or municipal buildings that have been given up, and they go into these historical buildings, at least in the UK, and they turn them into amazing places. Like in Glasgow, there's one in the Counting House, which was like the municipal tax office right downtown. It's a beautiful building. And the one tonight, I don't know what it was, but let me tell you, friends, it was pretty great. And even better after pint number 3. So
I used to live in the UK, and when my parents came to visit me, they were fascinated by Wetherspoons. They were like, "This is amazing. It's the cheapest place in the universe." And it's like, I mean, yeah. But there's
it's double-edged. It's a double-edged sword.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. That being said, when I was there, they had there was like a food sensation at Wetherspoons. It was nachos with like this Caribbean sauce called reggae sauce that blew up on Dragon's Den. And so this guy came on, sang a song about sauce.
Was that their
And then
cultural appropriation
Wetherspoons started
special?
serving the sauce, and it was like this massive thing.
Wow.
Oh,
They did not
yeah.
have any reggae sauce. They didn't even have
No?
peri-peri sauce. No, they didn't as far as I could see, but they did have a Korean spiced chicken burger, I think, that was on the menu tonight. That was on tonight,
There you
like
go.
they change it. Like it's a daily menu. It's Wetherspoons. It's not. You've never been.
This is
What's the
not
special du jour?
It's not an ad. This is not
What
an
does
ad for Wetherspoons.
What does the chef recommend tonight at Wetherspoons? Check my phone. Got it. Okay, good.
I highly recommend the calamari.
What is the catch of the day?
If you don't know what the catch of the day is, you're the catch of the day.
It's market price.
There you go.
Exactly. So yes, as mentioned, I'm in Liverpool, and Lisa, of course, is in Alberta, and Steve is in Saskatchewan, and I'm only temporarily here, whereas those two are stuck there in their places.
Forever.
There's
And
no escape.
I think today we should probably touch on the whole budget, capital gains, Foofaraw, the I
Hubbub.
can't think of hubbub. That's another good word. Yeah, that kind of thing that's surrounded it. Because what's been fascinating to me is that you hear a lot about like this notion of a culture war, which I don't buy into. However, I think that with the capital gains, people complaining about it, there are people on the other side of the argument who are like, no. If you're selling I saw someone saying today, if you're selling your cottage and you're worried about capital gains, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy from people.
Relaxed. Yeah.
But I mean, what is it? It's gone. It was 50%, and now it's 60% of capital gains over
60
250,000 or something.
66
so
point something.
And this is where I think a lot of people are getting confused, is like the numbers and percentages fly around a lot. But in reality, like most countries pay 100% of tax on capital gains. Like if you make capital gains, they're just all taxed. In Canada, we've exempted 50% of it for a long time. Basically since the Harper years, if I'm remembering right. And now they're just changing that exemption to you pay tax on 66% of what you got. Above $250,000. There's a lot of people who are treating it like it's going to be a massive sum of money. It's 6 cents on the dollar above $250,000.
People are not good with cents on the dollar. I think we've learned that in Canada. I find it funny that so many people have their knickers in a knot about this that it will never impact them. Like it will never impact them. Um, and yeah, it's for people who have the means. I mean, there's that corporate tax also. Um, but yeah, they're all upset about it, like as if this is going to affect every single Canadian. And unfortunately, I wish it would, but it doesn't. Um, but they're also mad at all the beneficial things that are in the budget. But we'll stick with capital gains for now.
Well,
I mean,
and I think it's notable. It's going to raise 13.9 billion over the next couple of years.
exactly. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if not from the fabulously wealthy, where?
Well, that's what I don't understand. Why are people so concerned about the fabulously wealthy, right? Like, not that they're the enemy, but I mean, if you have somebody tweeted something today too that, oh, it's a tax on people who work hard. No, it's not. It's a tax
No.
on people who own a lot of things. That's really what it is, and sell them. A lot of people work really hard and don't have the risk of capital gains over $250,000. So, yeah, I don't understand well, I mean, I do understand. It's just because it's a liberal budget.
So do you think, Stuart, is your perspective different as somebody sitting there with a fabulously high net worth of $3,000?
For those of you who haven't listened to the other episodes, we'd Google search my net value, and it was between $2,800 and $15,000 or $17,000, which is frighteningly accurate.
It's not your net value. You are very valuable.
I'm
You're
very
only
valuable.
worth-
Great
You're
value.
only worth
Yes.
$3,000.
We
As a
value you
human-
immensely.
Well, that's nice. That's so
Yeah.
kind. But really, when it comes down to the bottom line, it's about $3,000.
Yeah.
So no, it's interesting because like Shannon and I sold a business in 2009 and took advantage of the capital gains allowance, which was the same, I think, at 250,000 at the time.
So you've got a one-time 1.25 million as well.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. That's the thing about it. And then what's interesting to me is that, as Lisa said, it's weird people getting the knickers in a knot about this because it's very American to me. It's super American thought to have that, no, we have to protect the rich because one day I might be rich. As opposed to saying, well, wait a minute, why don't I give myself every advantage possible and I still might be rich one day, but I'll be able to help the next guy. It's just a very American notion to think, we can't do this to really wealthy people because they'll leave and one day I might be super rich. It's just a weird, very, like I said, American way of thinking for me.
There's a very common narrative around it being about job creators, right? If you let the capitalists have massive stacks of capital, they'll create more jobs. But I think evidence is kind of shown to the contrary, right? Like the more concentrated capital gets, the more they start doing things like stock buybacks and layoffs to drive up stock prices. Like it just doesn't seem like one thing has led to the other.
No.
But on the flip side, I think what I really struggle with here is when somebody says, well, if you raise my taxes, I'm going to leave. Like,
Yeah.
is your loyalty to Canada and the people around you so thin that a small tax increase is going to make you cut bait?
Well, I
Well,
think
that
also
should-
what's in. Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I was gonna say, well, that should explain the ideology of these people, right? If it's like, if I don't get my way, well, I'm stomping my feet and leaving. So how do you think they're going to be doing anything good for people beneath them, right? Like that's not the goal of corporations to benefit the middle or the lower. It's to benefit the higher and the upper. So it's go then. Go.
It's interesting as well. Shannon had said, and Shannon, my lovely wife, who turned the vacuum on last week's episode, we're currently in a hotel in Liverpool. She's actually right over there. Do you want me to just turn the camera over to? She's in her
She'd love
pajamas.
that, yeah.
So just-
Hi.
He's sitting quietly.
We
She's
tried to
sitting
get
quiet.
her
She's
on. It
minding
didn't
her
work.
own business.
She's minding her own business. There's
Hands
not a
off the
vacuum in
vacuum.
sight. To be fine. The TV might go on halfway through. We'll see. But no, Shannon had made a great point saying like all these corporations, like we had the leadership of Shopify, which are a Canadian company and a massively successful international company based in Canada, complaining about this and the new budget. And Shannon made a great point saying, but they seem to be overlooking the fact that they don't have to pay as much health insurance as they would if they went to the US and had to cover health insurance for their employees. So there's massive benefits to the quality of life, and there's lots of problems with the healthcare system. However, we're getting that sort of built in and baked in, as opposed to the employers having to pay extra for it. That seems right to me, doesn't it?
But that doesn't show outrage. They're not allowed to have a temper tantrum if they actually go through all the details.
But why be outraged? Is the outrage based entirely about Trudeau, or is the outrage based on this notion that they're going to lose a few bucks?
I think a lot of the outrage is coming from a very small subset of people, because there are people that this is going to affect. The thing is, a lot of the people who are complaining about how this is going to affect them, truthfully, aren't recognizing or failing to recognize just how much they benefited from all of the upsides of Canadian society, right? Like, say you're selling your cottage. Okay, the tax costs of building like the roads out to that cottage country and services out to that cottage country. You want people who work in cottage country, who are educated, who have healthcare. You want all of those things. It's reasonable to expect you to pay for those benefits. Like, and I think some people really don't see the benefit. They just see the cost, right?
But I don't understand, if you have worked hard to get a cottage and then you sell your cottage, how do you not recognize the privilege that you have in buying a cottage and selling a cottage? And why don't you think that you should have to pay higher tax on that? I mean, for the individuals, we'll say that this may impact. So you sell your house, whatever it is. You can offset that if you max out your RSP contributions, if you max out a TFSA, you can offset some of that tax. We're talking about like bigger picture people who are making the deals and selling things left and right that should quite honestly have to pay tax on things, because that also goes into our economy. That also goes back to paying for things like the roads and things like, that we take advantage of every day that we forget about. So I think it's misguided anger, which, shocker, because the people that I see tweeting about it, like I said, I don't think that's going to affect you every year,
I do also think it's worth noting the Conservative Party has actually declined to say whether or not they would keep this. So, like, who is actually standing against this politically? It's kind of nobody. There was that letter from the 150 tech CEOs, but like 150 tech CEOs saying, "Oh no, they want our money." Yeah, we do. Yeah. Correct. Good read.
Give me the money.
Accurate.
I think what needs to be clarified as well, of course, is that the capital gains only applies if you're selling. It doesn't apply, first of all, if you're selling your what's it
primary
called?
residence.
Primary residence. That's the word. Mm-hmm. I've been to Wetherspoons. I'm sorry. Primary residence. So it's like if you're selling your house and you're moving into an apartment or assisted living or whatever, not assisted living, like nursing home or retirement home or something like that, it's like, that doesn't affect you. You'll be fine. You get all that money. Whereas, if you've got a cottage, if you're deciding to sell up your cottage, for example, that means you're not buying another cottage. You're not moving from cottage to cottage. You're just selling it and moving on to the next thing. I don't believe you're taxed on that unless you get rid of it and liquidate it. Is that correct? I don't know if I'm right on that or not, though. Shannon says no. Shannon's shaking her head.
I believe you're taxed on the gains. Yeah.
So you're taxed on the gains. Yeah.
So like if you bought a cottage for, X amount of money, made $250,000 on it, you wouldn't. That's all exempted. Anything you make above that, you're paying the tax on. But you're only paying the capital gains tax rate, which depending on where you're at, it's going to be somewhere around 50%-ish on the money above that $250,000. Right. So it's going to affect people. But if your entire retirement is based on the sale of your cottage, any financial planner is going to tell you that was not a great strategy. Right. Like we have RRSPs for a reason.
Fair. I'm wondering if people are sort of up in arms because we know the federal government has made statements of trying to limit landlords and their issues and how they're screwing people. And so if you're selling off an investment property, that's where you're going to pay the gains. So I'm wondering if that has part and parcel of like, the government wants to restrict that ability. And now when we sell them off, because we can't make money on people anymore, now we have to pay taxes. So that just popped in my head just reading this. So I don't know. I haven't heard anybody say that, but maybe that's where, because there are a lot of landlords out there. There are a lot of
Oh, for sure.
Sitting MP landlords out there.
I mean, we have friends who own multiple properties, and that's kind of been, it's interesting because that's kind of been their retirement plan, is that they buy property and they rent it out, and the idea is they're going to sell them all at one point in time, and that's the big cash in. Now they're going to be affected by all that capital gains taxing, and obviously, but I mean, you're right. It is. I mean, it's a bit of a gamble. It's like putting your money in the stock market, because housing prices could theoretically entirely crash as well, and you could lose your shirt. It's an interesting thing. It's also, to me, it's like the idea of people getting upset about the capital gains is it's like ignoring the idea that or the fact that people in Canada, when they win the lottery, don't get taxed. If you win the Lotto 649 or whatever Lotto Max, there's no tax on that money, which is crazy, because you could win $70 million and there's no tax on that money. You go and you win $100,000 on Price is Right in the US, half of that money is taken away from you.
Yeah.
And it's just a very interesting sort of, it seems much more American the way we do it than the Americans do it for lottery wins, but it's the same mentality of like, I might win one day with capital gains, and therefore we shouldn't be taxing because it might benefit me sometime down the road, which is bizarre.
But the same people saying that are the same people who are saying, I'm going to win the lottery one day. Like, it's wishful thinking, right? Like, I mean, there are very few people, once you've hit a certain age demographic, where you're going to make it, quote unquote, right? And be part of that upper echelon. Is that the dream that keeps people going? Maybe. Is that why they're up in arms right now? Maybe. But realistically, this type of thing is going to hit business owners, corporations, and house flippers who go in, buy it low, flip it, sell it high, which is part of the issue we're having with the housing crisis, right? So again, we have to look at it in a bigger picture, which a lot of people are not great at doing.
I don't know if you folks saw the numbers from the government that were saying, like, the number of people who would, like, last year who would have been affected by these changes. 40,000 people total across the entire country.
Right. Which in a room is a lot, but not across the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and those 40,000 people control about a quarter of all the wealth in the country.
Right.
Like, asking them to pay a little more, I'm good with it. But the other question you got to ask is, why is, like, if I work for a living, 100% of my labor is taxed, right? There's exemptions for the first bit, but 100% of my labor is taxed. Why is only 66%?
The fact that you said work for a living, by the way, with IN apostrophe at the end.
He sounds like Sean Fraser.
Sounded genuine, didn't it? A man of the people.
I was raised by Maritimers, damn it.
Man of the people.
But, like, if 100% of my labor is taxed, but only 66% of your capital gains are taxed, and I'm relatively confident that I am working harder than your money. Call me crazy.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that working harder aspect. I don't know about that argument, but I think you're right in the idea of that when you invest money, there's an inherent risk involved. So you might win and you might not win. That's the risk of what investing. That's why there's a bigger payoff from investing. I just make my money work for me. And I'm air quoting that. But it might not. It might slack off and be like some sort of teacher.
Well, that's why I take all of my wealth and bury it in wooden boxes full of gold coins.
Just convert it. Put it down in the well.
Big X in the backyard.
Yeah,
you know where it goes.
Exactly.
Hey, man, gold only goes up. You know the rules.
That's true.
Didn't it go down recently and everybody panicked? Sorry.
Look, man, I don't know the first thing about gold. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, as a big boss man, let me tell you, no, I don't know. I have no idea either. I'm staying at a Holiday Inn right now. I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm obviously
gold.
I planned poorly. I have no RSPs or property. I'm doomed. This is what's happening.
No.
This podcast is it for me, guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
okay, no pressure. No pressure.
It's all your eggs in this basket. How's he going to afford his gold bar doorstops?
This is where, Steve, this is where us as like public sector people can sit back and go, pension.
Exactly. I don't even know what that word is. I don't even know how to spell it.
It really sneaks up on you.
It does. It certainly does.
Yeah, but like the capital gains thing, I can't help but wonder, like, do you actually think any actual capital flight will happen? Do you think any of these gazillionaires who are like, well, I'm going to take my successful business and restart it somewhere completely different?
No.
Where are they going to go?
Does
you're
anybody
right.
buy it?
I mean, it's kind of the same, by extension, the same thing as the trickle-down economics. It's the idea that if we put enough money in the rich people's hands, they will spend it and
They'll
spend
give
it
it
and
back.
spend it. And the thing is like, once you get to a point, it's like, no, rich people, you can only spend so much money. If you have billions of dollars, you don't need billions every day to spend. You just need a tiny fraction of that to spend. The rest of it just sits in your bank account forever. Compared to, for example, like CERB, which had lots of problems, but in general was fantastic because every person who got CERB was like spending that money right away. They're buying groceries, they're buying, like household stuff. They were just going out and eating. That money was going immediately back into the economy. It's not trickle down, it's trickle out, right? I think it seems to be a better analogy than trickle down, because the trickle down, you're right, is a myth. The idea that we're going to make the heads of Shopify richer, and that's somehow going to benefit Canadians at large is questionable. Are they going to do cool stuff with it? Maybe, if we're lucky. But I don't know. I mean, it's not like they're going to suddenly save the country with employment.
But this is it. Capital, like its interests aren't aligned with yours and mine, right? Those big investment firms, those big mutual funds, all of that stuff, all they're after is getting the return. Right? They're not interested in building something. They're not interested in taking care of their employees. They're not interested in their responsibilities to Canada and Canadians, right? They're interested in growing their businesses and paying their shareholders. Like that's their required duties, right? That's their fiduciary duty. And so we can't just rely on the generosity of the fabulously wealthy. We can't just rely on them to suddenly decide to build libraries. It's got to be taxed.
I think it's like, well, you're right. We can't just hope that they're all going to turn out to be like Richard Gere's character from Pretty Woman, who owned some fat building, who like just bought other companies and chopped them up, and then one day he meets a sex worker with a heart of gold and decides that he's going to build ships. I mean, that just doesn't happen. Rarely.
Well,
it happens
it
rarely.
I mean, we're basically we're betting the whole thing on three ghosts just coming to Elon Musk in the middle of the night.
Well, I think we can see that, right? Like, I mean, there was a quote last year at some point that the billionaires of the world, if they just took a small percentage of their money and reallocated it to the good, that everybody would move up. But they're not in the business of caring, so everybody stays where they are, is moving down. So
and as
tax the fuck out of them. I don't care.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Someone said, there's a way for billionaires to make a great positive effect in the world, and that's called taxes.
Yeah,
that's what happens. You know what I mean? And I think that people sometimes they see governments moving slowly, tied down and mired in bureaucracy and bad mismanagement, bloated administration. All that stuff's true. But in general, it seems to still be the best bang for our buck to be able to get money into services and to help people in the public as fast as possible.
Well, if there was more philanthropy on the part of these people, if they were spending more than they were earning per day, even for like a 3-month period, they'd get tons of tax breaks. They wouldn't feel any of this. But I mean, and the billionaires, whatever, that's fine. But like, there's a way to offset it if they really are worried about it. That could benefit on the front end instead of on the back end with taxes. But that wouldn't allow them to have the outrage. That wouldn't allow them to threaten, we're going to pick up and leave. And that seems to be part of what happens in politics these days is somebody has a temper tantrum and stomps their feet. And is it just an empty promise that they're going to do? Of course it is. No one's going to uproot their entire business, especially if it's a long-standing business within Canada's walls, right? Is Galen going to get up and move to the U.S.? Have at her, Galen.
Could he?
Please and thank you.
Would he be so kind?
What do we think about?
He's not running Loblaws anymore. It's some new guy named Per Bank.
Oh, he's running Loblaws. He's just running. He doesn't want to be the face of it anymore.
He's like Hillary Clinton.
What a name.
He's the shadow government.
Somebody made a meme about Galen and he was, that's it. I'm out. Coward. Trudeau's had flags for years and he still shows up. Don't get it.
Which is interesting because it speaks to the, as I was saying at the top of the show, about how uh, there's this people talk about a class war and a culture war, and this the capital gains taxing in the new budget is not helping that. It's making it seem like more real. I know that people like David Musgrove would say it's absolutely real. And it may be because you look at things like, for example, Galen Weston, as you talk about, with all the barriers and plexiglass walls and stuff that they have into supermarkets now, and there's an extreme distress. And then conversely, on the other side, we've got the Steal from Loblaws Day. And it's like, well, first of all, don't do that, because the only person that's going to get hurt by that day is the lowly schmuck who tries to take a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
That's the only person that's going to get affected by that. But there is that mentality of like, do we think that that's building? Like, I hope it isn't, but do we think that that's building in Canada?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
the whole boycott. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's the whole boycott
Boycott,
Loblaws in May, right? And I was thinking about it because I mean I get the idea of it. But at the end of the day, if that does have financial impact, who's going to be directly impacted? Frontline workers,
Absolutely.
right? They'll just be like, okay, so instead of 10 cashiers, now we only need 5 cashiers. So
Yeah.
I get it. We have to think of a different way of trying to say F you to these conglomerates, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, if you saw somebody put something in their bag, no, you didn't. But at the same time, if they get dinged, they're the ones that are going to have to go to court. So, I don't know. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I think the whole class war thing has shifted a lot in a short time. I think wealth inequality has been a big part of it, but I think also this sort of idea of eat the rich that's really been gathering speed. But I think, and I've heard this from multiple sort of reporters and stuff who talk to the wealthy and the powerful, is that the thing that rattled a bunch of folks was that submarine that the billionaires and the super rich folks went down in.
What?
And no, it's not because of what happened to them. It's because of sort of the giddy delight that the general public greeted it with.
Yeah, I can
That
see that.
many rich folks
Yeah.
were genuinely like, oh my God.
They don't like
They-
us.
Not just they don't like us. If something horrible were to happen to us, they would take delight in that.
Right.
And I think that genuinely probably rattled some folks. And,
Well, no, it's fascinating to me. I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, you think about people who are at that level of wealth are the Bill Gates of the world, and Bill Gates has done.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't speak to his character as a person, but I mean, he's done a lot of tremendously good things with his money. Um,
Not
but
Windows
you can see
Vista.
him looking at that, you going, I don't know. This doesn't sound like they like me very much. Not a lot of public appearances by Bill since then, maybe.
No.
Maybe you might be right.
It's the rise of the
Certainly not underwater
proletariat.
ones.
It scares the shit out of them.
well, but like that shift has been happening for a while. Like if you think about it, even I'm trying to figure out, like I'm bad at dates and times, as you both know. But
Yes, we're aware of that.
Don't tell
for
anyone,
those who
Steve.
for those who don't know, I screw up time zones semi-weekly.
You thought the time zones had flipped this week.
Yes. And I'm gonna blame COVID brain is what I'm gonna do.
And thankfully, we have the same time zone in Saskatchewan and Alberta, so I can help see that.
There you go. But what I was gonna say was like the conspicuous consumption culture from not too long ago, sort of the Pimp My Ride, sort of the MTV Cribs, even Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous before that. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but the rate of sort of rich people flexing their fabulous wealth has declined pretty significantly. So I think
that's fascinating observation.
I don't know. I think it's all part of one path.
Okay, but like on TikTok, like if you're scrolling through your For You page and it's all like, unbox this with me, right? It is influencers, of which Steve and I are not, because we don't get shit. But there are these unboxings,
sound
and
bitter.
it's like, no, I do this. It's my philanthropy. I do it for the good of the people.
are.
I mean, you do get some truly bizarre ad offers. At least I do.
Well, again,
I considered doing the one the gun that shoots salt at bugs.
Oh, Whenever I think of those guns, those salt guns for flies, I think of you immediately. That'd be a good match. It's a brand alignment.
Exactly. I was like, brand integration right there. It's like, okay,
We'll get you a camo toque and it'll be a whole thing. But anyway, the unboxings with me and the influencers who get, like mass PR stuff like that. And I watch it and it's just like an overabundance of stuff. And then sometimes I'll go through the comments and I feel like because it's a regular person, I think a lot of the people that watch that, I mean, some hate it, are living vicariously, right? And it's that same, maybe one day I'll be an influencer and I'll get tons of PR packages, but it's excessive. Like the money that goes into that is excessive, but maybe because it's been brought down a level.
I think it's less than it used to be, though. I think, like, thinking back to the Vine days, that was a big thing. It'd be people like with wads of cash, like literally fanning out like $10,000 in cash and doing massive shopping sprees and spending tons of the money themselves. Whereas you look at, there's a lot, at least, and it's hard to tell now because of the algorithm, right? It's hard to tell what I'm seeing, if that's what everyone's seeing, or if there's any similarities whatsoever. But from my viewing experience, I see a lot less of people doing that consumption culture lifestyle, as Steve mentioned, about how people are just spending money looking lavish. There's not a lot of it's like a fancy car doesn't necessarily cut it anymore as far as clout goes online and social. And fanning a bunch of money out also might not cut it. And you also don't see that in like hip hop culture as much anymore as well. At least I don't think I do. At least I'm not super up on hip hop culture, but I try to stay abreast of most of it.
The white guy.
I assumed you were a go-to expert on it.
How dare you? How dare you question my flow? But it's, you don't sort of see, like, even people like Drake, for example, there's still an opulence there, but there's not an in your face as much as it used to be.
Yeah.
Like, there seems to be less pride in that aspect compared to videos of people who are going out and who I hate myself for loving them, when they'll go up to someone in a dollar store, like a Dollarama, and say, "Hey, can you give me $1? I need to buy this toy for my child." And they're like, "I don't have $1." Or, "Here's $1. Oh, why did you give me this $1 today?" "Well, here's a gift for you. Here's $1,000. And what do you like? You like the Raptors? Let's go. We're going courtside. And we're going on a helicopter ride just for fun for most of the game. And here's $20,000 more." And it's just crazy. And it's all about giving money to people as opposed to saying, "I'm enjoying money. I've got the money." I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a sign of that the culture is shifting and people are like, you want to be able to help people. You don't want to be able to just consume and look fancy all the time. Is it?
Yes and no, right? Like it's that one's always so tricky to me. Like, because I get sucked into those too, where like there'll be somebody who's living on the street and somebody will roll up in a car and set them up with a bunch of supports or whatever.
Sure.
It's philanthropy, yeah, but it's philanthropy for a camera. Like, there's a layer of exploitation underneath that I'm super uncomfortable with. And I think that's why, like, when we talk about the idea of taxation versus, philanthropy, I think that's part of it. Is when we talk about a guy like Bill Gates, why does he get to decide how vaccines are distributed in huge parts of the world? Like, what gives him that power, right? And
a gazillion dollars.
But this is it. Philanthropy isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's putting all the cards in the hands of individuals who maybe don't always have everybody's best interests in mind, who maybe aren't always the right person to be making that call. And, in many cases, there's a selfish element to it too, whether it be good feelings or buying PR or whatever it may be.
I can forgive the ones like on the ones that we see where they'll roll up on somebody who's down on their luck and they will set up a GoFundMe and they will do all that. I have less of an issue with that because I think that process is to show people that you can do good in the world. I have more of an issue when, like, if I was to go out and see a houseless person and be like, "Here's $5," and record it and post it, like that's icky to me. Like, you can do good in the world that nobody needs to know about except you, and that should be enough. So ideological. Danielle Smith would call me an ideologue.
How dare you have beliefs?
I know, right? How dare you want to do good things?
The very nerve.
But I think there's a responsibility on the parts of the Gateses and the Westons and all of that, because they have accrued on the backs of people. Sure, you provided a service, but on the backs of people, you've acquired this mass wealth. There should be an expectation that you are doing things that are good. And of course, they're going to do things that are going to benefit them on the back end. I think there's something here about that in the budget. But we should expect that. And if they're not going to do that, or if they're going to do it with conditions, then we tax the shit out of them. And I'm still okay with that.
So is that the government's PR magic bullet if they frame the budget as one of these videos where they find someone in a Dollarama and take them to a Leafs game? Is that how they best frame it PR wise? Is that going to make it more palatable for people? They're like, you know what, this is a good idea.
No,
you don't think so?
I don't think there's anything that can come out. The people that look, because we're so polarized when it comes to politics right now, I don't think there's anything that could be presented by this government that a certain offset are going to go, yeah, that's a good idea, or that may actually help me, because there's so much entrenched hate, right? Mm-hmm. So, but for the middle section that might be wondering, okay, what is this budget actually going to do for me potentially, or people that I know? Yeah, I think this government has done a piss poor job of actually showing what they're doing, why they're doing it, and a reasonable timeline of how it's going to be impactful. So maybe they do have to do sappy commercials. I don't know.
Well, I think part of it though is the realization that, the liberals tend to frame everything as a PR issue, right? They tend to frame things as like, it's not that we're not doing a good job, it's that we haven't communicated what a good job we're doing. And so what I struggle with is, if you were actually improving the material conditions of people's lives, you wouldn't need to convince them. Right. And so what I see with this budget is they're trying to frame it as a Robin Hood budget where they're, taking from the fabulously wealthy and giving to those in need. But in reality, yeah, they're taking some from the fabulously wealthy, but there's not a lot of money, honestly, to help ordinary folks. Like the one that boggles my mind is the Canada Disability benefit that they were so excited about and raving about what a great transformative thing this is going to be. It's $200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Is that going to cover somebody's gas bill? Probably not. Like, come on.
They raised tax exemptions too. So I don't know how that would impact people or what that would be inclusive of, right? Tax exemptions for disability, like whatever they need. Mm-hmm. But again, you have to phrase it so that the person sitting, wondering how they're going to make ends meet, how that they can visualize what that's actually going to look like for them. Right? It's hard. It's like, well, all of our cell phones have gone down by 25%, right?
That was bizarre. That was such a weird tweet for the PMO to put out. It was just bizarre to say that cell phones have gone down by 50% since 2019. It was like, that is a bold claim to make that is not entirely accurate.
But it's such a Trudeau claim that, like,
do you think?
It's technically in the strictest sense correct, because every provider has some plan tucked in the corner in the fine print that you get a rotary phone and stone tablets to throw at your friends, and you pay $15 a month for it.
You can't dial out, but people can call you. Like I don't. Yeah.
But this is it. They say, like, yeah, we've done this in the strictest sense. Like, I don't know how much you've gone through the budget, but one of the things that they have is this graphic that lays out Canada's marginal tax rates and how ours is the lowest in the G7, and like how phenomenal for us. It totally leaves out provincial taxes. Just skips over those fully. So it's like, yeah, we're super lowly taxed if you ignore huge portions of the tax
province.
People pay, right? Like, but this is what they do. They're like, if you only look at this little corner, it's great.
But that's on the provinces. That's not on the feds, right? It's easy to blame them.
I think it's a bit of both. Yeah, exactly. It's I was going to take issue with the comment that it's, people won't, the best way to convince people that you're doing something is it has to impact them. And I think that's accurate. I think that's totally accurate. But I think to make life better, air quotes, for people, I think people don't know how to quantify that. They don't know unless they're at rock bottom, unless you're like really, really low, it's hard to tell what better is, because I think everyone's like goldfishing. Everyone just kind of grows to the size of their means, and I think it is a PR issue. I think they really have to be like, as the focus has to be less on what they're doing for me and what they're doing from a PR perspective, and more on what you are doing for others to help people out, to help make everything better, which will in the end impact you. Maybe that's too lofty of a thing.
I think you're putting a lot of credit on people, because I don't really think that it's the same
true.
people that complain about the carbon tax, yet they have a quad and motorcycles and a jacked up truck, right? You know what I mean? And so it would be great if we lived in a society that was like, okay, like, I'm good. What are you doing for others? But I think you have to hit the people that are like me. There's a lot of those out there.
So I have my theory for the way to deal with this, and it's big and sweeping, but it basically boils down to the way that you get people to actually believe in government again is to reinvigorate the public service. That's people's touch point with the government. That's where we interact with it, right? And so if people's interactions with the public service are positive, they are getting what they need in timely fashions from staff who are well supported, well compensated, happy to be there, all that good stuff. If we reinvigorate the public service, the rest sort of follows, right? Because public transit reinvigorated, people are able to get around a lot better. Things like the passport office, if they're properly supported, then Pierre Poilievre can't throw temper tantrums about it anymore. Like, it's one of those things where we get stuck in this vicious cycle of, you know, these public services get cut to the bone, and then we get told the public services aren't working, and then people don't trust the government because the public services are overwhelmed. And it's almost like, bring a New Deal, Trudeau. Let's embrace your inner New Deal. Oh my God, my brain is spacing.
Truman.
Yes, FDR.
Is it Truman or FDR?
Owen, right now, Owen is on mute. Who's producing the show, and he's listening, going, "I know what the answer is. I know what the answer is."
He's screaming into his computer right now.
Exactly.
Come on in, Owen. You're welcome. We're nice.
One put it in the chat.
One of us.
No, he's not going to admit that. It's too much. But what's interesting is being here in the UK, and the UK has a myriad of its own issues, but especially specifically here in Liverpool, we're staying across the street from the main train station, which is across the street from a big hall. There's tons of like 100 to 150-year-old money to 200-year-old money that was put into the city, and they kind of rebuilt. And even more recently in 2010 to 2020, there's tons of money put into the city. And you're right in a sense that you see that kind of money and people like go, wow, this has made my life slightly more pleasant and better. And it feels like I'm part of a community now. And I think that's maybe more difficult in Canada because of the vast expanses and because of the weather for a lot of Canada. But that idea is correct. I think that idea of like the government is spending money to make public services more visible and visibly good, I think people would be like, okay, this is maybe a good thing. I think you're right. I think you're totally right. Don't quote me on that though.
I was saying, can we save that as a clip? Or?
I was going to say, I think Steve wins because that is the touch point, right? So you're forgiven for being late. That is the touch point for people. So, you know, if people didn't have to wait in line or wait for their passport or deal with, you know, disgruntled workers when they're calling in to CRA I think there's a lot of services that, it just takes time, right? Some of the things just take time, processing time. But like, I don't think people realize if you're applying for CPP, there's a minimum of like a 6-month wait for CPP.
Oh, God.
So like you can't go, hey, I'm going to retire tomorrow and get my CPP. You're going to have a 6-month gap in pay. So I don't know what we need to do to get those services going quicker. But if somebody called and got great service, prompt reaction, and, you know, a timeline, that may make them feel better. Does anybody else, when we talk about federal public service, go pour le service en français, appuyez sur le neuf? That every time I hear federal public service, that's what I think about. Sorry.
You have an angry cartoon French woman that gives you the other prompt? Is that what happens?
That's what happens.
Yeah,
Call the feds.
Your French accent was just so spectacularly
Merci.
Quebecois.
Merci.
Yeah, it was good. You could almost smell the Du Maurier. It was good. I liked it.
And
Just-
the poutine in the corner. Yeah.
Just felt like you should be yelling at Anglo tourists or something.
I can do that.
So I think we've solved it. We basically solved it. So in the PMO, if you're listening, it's the thing is make touch points, public touch points better for people. Just make
You
it
know what?
better.
You know what would really fix everything? Honestly, what would turn this whole thing around? What the government needs more than anything: more middle management. Just
More
really build out the middle.
You need more
Yeah.
supervisors to supervise the supervisor, and those managers can manage the
Oh,
supervisors of the
If
supervisors.
you aren't supervising your supervisors, what are they even doing?
How do you solve
Are you
that
even
kind of thing?
managing?
Because that's I think we mentioned this in a previous episode. We talked about, and I said earlier today as well, that there's an assumption that governments make everything slower and terribler and more bureaucratic, and largely they do. And I think that's why people turn to private and go, well, they'll be leaner and meaner. But how do you strike that balance between leaner and meaner and doing public good, not for the bottom line? How do you do that?
That's
It's a
tricky
self-fulfilling
question.
Fix that,
prophecy, though.
Steve.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have governments that instill all this middle, right?
Mhm.
And then, like, obviously, the more middle you have, the less you're given to the front line. So the services go down, people get upset, and then you go, okay, well, we'll cut the middle. And then you're going to cut the middle, expecting that the frontline services are going to go up, which they won't. And then they'll say,
Mm.
holy shit, we need more middle. We need more middle to manage that. Like, this has always been the case. It's always been the case. Certainly
So
Alberta.
there's that, but there's another layer here, which is in a lot of public service jobs, the frontline workers are viewed as being the floor, the entry level.
Mhm.
And so the place that you progress is to the middle, right? Like that's where.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this happens to lots of folks. Like for lots of nurses, they become managers or whatever it may be. For lots of teachers, they become administrators or whatever it may be. And so one thing that I think is really important that would help to deal with this is to start paying better and valorizing and supporting those frontline staff to make that frontline position a desirable position. Because a lot of what happens is you wind up with, the group of managers and they're like, oh, Carl over in HR is doing a great job. We really want to promote him, but there's no spot. We'll make a spot for him. And this happens again and again. And then when it's time to cut, they don't want to cut the people they hang out with every day. They don't want to cut the people they go to the meetings with. They don't want to cut Carl. Carl's a great guy. So they cut the people they've never met. And so it's putting that value and that focus back on the front lines instead of the managerial class and bringing up the wages for the front lines and the benefits.
I think Steve solved it this week. I think you
Right?
solved
Like,
it.
why are we even here?
I know.
I
What a
mean,
waste of time.
Anybody that's listening from the PMO's office, we come as a package.
Yeah, we do come as a package. We split everything
This is
three
just
ways.
my Neo-Citrin induced clarity.
Maybe that's all it
it's-
took. Maybe
it's
that's all
all
it
going to
took.
shake loose in a couple of minutes here.
He's going to
Cut
forget
through the
everything
clarity.
he said.
I have no idea what I said at all. Couldn't tell you. For those at home who I don't even know if we actually directly told them, I have COVID right now.
We did, at the
yes, we
beginning
did
of
at
the-
top, exactly.
So
This is
I
like
do want to take 1 second to highlight something important though. The reason why I found out I had COVID was because we were going to have some friends over for brunch yesterday. Because I am a brunch bitch. That is a very real thing.
It's a very
But we
socialist
were
thing
going to
say.
have some friends over for brunch, and we decided to do some courtesy tests before they came over.
Wow.
And we
You
caught
Communist.
it.
you had no other inkling at all?
I had like a mild cough. I thought I had a cold. And
Okay.
like I tested with a very expired test kit at work on Friday and nothing. And so I just assumed like I had a little stuffy nose. I was feeling all right. And we both tested positive as our friends were on the way to our house. So probably
Oh,
should have
wow.
done that a little earlier.
Oh, wow. More smoked
mean-
salmon for them.
Save some friends some trouble, I suppose. But so moral of the
interesting.
story, test before you get together with friends. I just saved my
Yes.
friends a lot of trouble.
That was very kind of you.
And they
Very
have new
kind
tests
soul.
out now. Apparently, they
They
have
do,
new COVID
yeah.
tests out.
And if
You
you're
still
not
have to-
testing, what are you scared?
What are you scared of?
Let's not turn this into a fight. Let's not turn this into a culture war again.
Oh, but they're so fun.
I know they are.
I've
All right, well,
never
let's,
had the COVID.
You've never had COVID?
Nope.
I think Shannon and I have had it twice.
Up to
She
date
said
on my
she's had it
vaccines,
once.
and I mask when I go to Costco.
I mean,
What's that,
0
Jen?
out of
I've
10
only
would
had it
not
once.
recommend. But I will say I take great solace in the fact that I'm vaccinated. That
Yep,
helps.
100%.
Oh, for sure. No, I'm vaxxed to the hilt. I was going to say
I
some
will
other word,
tell
but I
you.
won't say it.
One distinctive frustration that I have learned about in this process, my lovely wife has multiple sclerosis. She's immunocompromised. She got COVID twice in the span of a month once, which was not great.
God.
The first time she got COVID, she got Paxlovid, and that helped enormously.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to get Paxlovid these days?
Yeah, they just don't give
Right?
it out as much anymore, do they?
It's wild. They don't give it to anybody. And it's like, we know it helps. We know it's good. We have it. Just, nope.
Does it cost a fortune, maybe? Is that why?
I
don't know.
actually don't know that one.
Yeah. Someone with Google.
Yeah, 'cause, you
probably
know,
knows. Anyone listening with Google.
People's
if you can
people's
find
health
out.
versus yeah.
Is this another one where Owen's just like frantically screaming at his computer
He's
screen
like,
again?
I
"God."
know the answer.
He's going to come back and his hands are bleeding from scratching his own skin.
We're sorry, Owen.
All right, let's finish this up because it's getting very late here and Wetherspoons closes in about 4 hours.
It has gradually gotten darker in your window. Like we've seen
I
the
know,
Oh, yeah.
It's just the transition, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. It shows you just the dynamics of the show.
It's like we're there.
As many listeners know, of course, we do improvise our own theme song at the end of each episode. Last week's was pretty good. Last week's was Faye Johnson. She did really well. I thought she did with the plants, the little fake succulents. I think they were, right? They're pretty good. What instrument do you have this week? Oh my God, what do you have, Lisa, this week?
Oh my God.
I have a gong. That's all I'm saying.
What? First question, why do you
Well,
have
because
that?
my decor is a little like Japanese tea house, and I'd forgotten that I had this, and so after I have to at least keep up with Boots over there. So
Yeah. Now, Steve, did you sleep with any other of your wife's relatives in order to get toys in which you could use as instruments?
No, but I do have a WWE championship belt and what I believe is a Warhammer figurine that I'm going to smack into it.
That's pretty good. I've got.
Top
Can I add
that.
an instrument as well? Well, I've got. Actually, I'll use Shannon. Can I use yours? Is it okay? I'm gonna use Smint.
you're gonna use Shannon? Oh,
Smint.
Oh,
I can't use
nice.
Shannon. She won't use it.
Oh, there
Okay.
you go.
Wait, that's pretty good. Are you guys ready?
You got it.
oh, I have to hold on. I have to put this in the air. Okay,
well,
ready?
make sure you're in the proper gong. I see you've got your fingers in the gong position.
I'm
You're,
ready
you're
to
in
go
the
now.
gongular position.
I'm in.
That's right.
That didn't sound right.
Here we go. Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken. Podcast is broken.
Broken. Whoa, that got abruptly louder.
That was a
I
big
watched
finish.
the meter just went off the. Yeah.
Wong.
Well, that's pretty good. That
There
should
you
get
go.
us back in the charts in the Netherlands.
That's
Should
right.
be. That's the kind of stuff they like, isn't it?
Tulips.
Perfect. Thanks
Yeah,
so much
that
for
and
watching and or
stroopwafel.
listening.
That's the whole list.
Yeah, that's the two things. Three things. Let's say thanks to everyone for watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken. Remember, you can subscribe at podcastisbroken.ca. You'll get an email every time there's a new episode. Or, of course, you can just enjoy us on your favorite podcast platform. We did rocket into the charts, as I said to someone. We were in the top 32 of news in Canada last week. So the coveted top 32.
We're coming for
position,
you.
which is great.
That's
We're
where
coming for you,
everybody's
so-
aiming for.
Exactly. 32. We're 32.
We're 32.
Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Take care of yourselves.
See everybody.
folks.